Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to East Central Missouri and the world, and welcome to the James Strong Show podcast number 185. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for making us a part of your day. I appreciate it. This podcast was recorded on the morning of Saturday, September the 5th, from the James Strong Studio in Western St. Charles County. Bit of a late start to the podcast today. Would have been a whole lot earlier. Some minor problems here in the studio. Right before I was ready to record, I spilled a pint of water into my soundboard and had to clean all that mess up. Then I broke my microphone stand. I had to fix that up. And in the process of fixing my microphone stand, I broke the table that my microphone stand sits on. I'm still frustrated because I went down this stupid rabbit hole of a minor problem, a minor mistake, turned into a major problem, turned into a huge problem. So I think those problems are fixed. I believe we can finally do a podcast. If I can read my dopey notes, which are also full of water that I spilled about an hour ago. Anyway, the topic of today's podcast, and I actually borrowed it from a line, an album of an old Phil Hendrie routine, comedian, actor Phil Hendrie, big fan of his. It was called The Death of Talk Radio. And it was it wasn't the death of talk radio. It was just how talk radio has evolved from this into that. And much of the album was a parody on different talk radio hosts and the such. The topic of my essay today is the death of fun. And it's only halfway tongue-in-cheek, okay? Because especially in today's times, especially with the pandemic, especially with the election, especially with the cancel culture, especially with everything having to be PC so nobody is ever offended anytime for any reason, we seem to have stumbled upon the death of anything that's fun and entertaining. Now, please don't misunderstand. I'm not saying that, okay, because we can't poke fun at people anymore because of the color of their skin or the way they were born or whatever, that nothing is fun anymore. That's not what I mean at all. In fact, that's part of the problem, because when anybody says anything even remotely controversial, they're canceled. So I guess I will say this. If you think this podcast is going to be something like that, cancel me right now. Please do, because I don't need you. If you think that this is going to be an essay that describes the way the world is, and my opinion and my take, and perhaps you can take something away from it when I'm finished, then please continue to listen. Society and the pandemic have basically canceled anything that's fun, in theory. And I mean anything. Sports, movies, talk radio in general, camping, conversation via individual or social media, either one, even comedy, seem to have just been canceled because of the pandemic, of the social justice warriors, of the cancel culture, the PC culture that we have, whereas everything has to be accepting, and you can't do anything that may hurt some little snowflake's feelings. Okay, and let me go into each of those: sports, movies, talk radio, camping, conversation, and comedy. Those are 6 items that I get a lot of fun out of, or at least in the past have gotten a lot of fun out of. The first, sports. Of course, all organized sports were canceled with the pandemic, and they're coming back now. But they're coming back differently than before. And when I say differently than before, I'm not talking about, look, we can't have fans in the stands. The teams can only travel in a certain confined area, or in the case of the NHL, and especially the NBA, they play in a bubble where they don't leave the little compound, okay? I'm not talking about that, because really those are minor changes. And when I say minor changes, I don't mean minor for the players. I mean minor for the individual who watches the sport. Because if you think about it, most people who enjoy sports don't go to the venue to watch the game, okay? And in the case of an NBA game, an NBA arena may hold 12,000 people, whereas they may have 12 million people watching a game, okay? So 12,000, 12 million. Who benefits the most? The 12 million, of course. While it certainly does change for the athletes, I get that. They are the entertainers. They are the ones who are being paid to entertain us. Now, make no mistake, sports is 100% entertaining. If people didn't enjoy watching sports, they would stop. Case in point, do more people watch baseball than curling? Of course. Why? Well, because baseball is entertaining and curling is not. A handful of Canadian folks may like to watch curling, but nobody else does, okay? Nothing against curling. Curling's fine. If you like it, good for you, okay? But sports is entertainment. It's definitely entertainment. And sports has become political. And this happened before the pandemic, okay, with the whole Colin Kaepernick kneeling whilst playing the national anthem, okay? And it's become even more political with the shooting of George Floyd and all the BLM logo on the back of the pitcher's mounds, the NBA stopping play for a couple of days in protest. Here's a newsflash to you folks. We watch sports to be entertained. When you do that, it's not entertaining. Okay, you want to do it? Fine. But you've lost me. And I'll tell you when you lost me big time, especially the NBA. Doc Rivers, who's the coach of the LA Clippers, okay, was a good NBA player, good coach, liked the guy a lot, big fan of Doc Rivers, okay? And I saw him at a news conference after a game talking about the whole Black Lives Matter thing, which, okay, you're an NBA coach. I don't want to hear you lecture me about Black Lives Matter, but you did anyway. And I was at the gym doing my routine, so at 5:30 in the morning, so he had a captive audience, and this was taped from the night before. And actually, at first, he was doing a good job. He was saying, look, we live in a time here where we all need to be treated equal. We're all human beings. We're all Americans. And some of the injustices done to black men, especially black men by white police officers, we shouldn't be, this should not be a black or a white thing. This should be an American thing. We're Americans. We're better than this. We don't need to accept this as fact, as the status quo. We need to speak out against it, and we need to do whatever we can to stop this. He had me right there. You know what? Wonderful. This is all-inclusive. We should, as Americans, expect something better. He had me. I'm listening. And then he went off the reservation. And here's how he did it. He said, look, I'm a black man. There is no white father out, and I have to tell my children to be careful when dealing with police officers. There is no black father out there who has to do that, so you can't possibly understand where we're coming from. This is a black problem, not a white problem, and white people need to understand that. Well, guess what, Doc? You were a fantastic basketball player. You're an amazing basketball coach. But when it comes to social skills, you're in front of a crowd of people with a microphone in your hand, or in front of you, I guess I should say, and a camera in your face, knowing that people are going to listen to you, and you spew this? Newsflash, I'm white, and I had that conversation with each and every one of my boys. And it wasn't a black or a white thing. There's always been bad cops. Always. I had my problem with them as a youth. And I'm quite certain that they didn't harass me and treat me poorly because of the color of my skin. They did it because they were bad human beings. They were bad individuals. And to each and every one of my boys, I've told them, look, if you're pulled over by a police officer It's hands on the wheel, wallet on the dash, yes, sir, no, sir, slow movements. Before you move, you ask permission to do anything every time. And if you're harassed, hassled, whatever, yes, sir, no, sir, take it, because he has a gun and you don't. Afterwards, we'll get a lawyer and we'll go and sue them. In the meantime, it's yes, sir, no, sir, because he has a gun and you don't. That's just a fact. It's not a black thing. It's not a white thing. It's a thing, okay? And when Doc Rivers turned it into a racial thing, it enraged me so much that I can't watch the NBA anymore, because I'm tired of having my finger pointed in my face and saying, listen, Whitey, listen, Karen, listen, Chad, you don't know what we're talking about. You don't know where we come from because you're not us. And maybe that's true. But here's the two things that you've forgotten. You're right. I don't know what it's like to be black because I've never been black. You don't know what it's like to be white because you've never been white. You're making an assumption that we don't have the same problems as you. You're segregating yourself purposely from the population of this country and segregating yourself and blaming me for something that I didn't do. Think about that. And because you've repulsed me so much, I don't want to watch your stupid game. So you've taken the fun out of sports because of that. You've politicized something that should be an escape. Sports should be an escape. You work all day. You have problems. Okay, now what do? You want to pop a beer and watch a ball game. You don't want to be lectured on your race. Sports, ruined. Not fun anymore. Number 2 on the list, movies. A few times a year, I'll go to a motion picture inside a theater, and I'll watch movies all the time on television. Not all the time, but quite often. Usually older ones on Turner Classic Movies. But a few times a year, I'll go to the movie theater, okay? But the movie theaters are closed. Some of them are starting to reopen, but it doesn't matter because there's no new movies being made. So we've got a snapshot in time where we're really not going to have much entertainment from movies, okay? Now, some of the movies that have been in the can for quite some time are going to be released, but probably so you can watch them in your home. Now, we watched a movie recently, the Fatima movie, okay? Watched it at home. And I was looking forward to that movie, and it was fine. But I watched it at home on my television, okay? It just wasn't the same, okay? And movies have stopped being fun for me for a while. Again, what's the number one reason for movies? What's the only reason that movies exist? And please don't tell me why they're art films and this is an important film that you must watch, and stop it. Movies are made to entertain. There's been no movie that is not entertaining that ever makes money because nobody wants to see it. Some of Spike Lee's art films have made $10,000 and cost $10 million to make. And those numbers are exaggerated, but you know what I'm talking about. Now, the entertaining Spike Lee films have made tons of money. But if they're not entertaining, nobody wants to watch it. Movies, like sports, are escapisms. They're entertainment. They're fun. And when the actors, when the directors, when anybody involved in movies becomes so repulsive that you can't watch them, they've taken the fun out of movies. I can't watch him. Robert De Niro is one of the finest actors ever. Once upon a time, he was my favorite actor. But now he is so repulsive when he opens his mouth with his hatred of Trump. Now, and I don't like Trump, okay? I'm not a fan. But I don't want to listen to Robert De Niro go off on some tirade spewing lies and misnomers and half-truths. I don't want to listen to that. I want to watch your dopey ass doing a movie, okay? Entertaining me. Sean Penn, same way. He's won 2 Academy Awards, a fine actor. And he went to Venezuela touting how great socialism is in Venezuela. Son, let me tell you something. If you're truly involved in socialism,